The more things change, the more they stay the same. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Monday, May 19th, 2025. The second round has been completed. And is your phone ringing yet for an executive position in Toronto?
No, and I doubt that it will, but there will be probably some changes. They've always got to have their pound of flesh when this time of year rolls around, as it seems to every year.
Literally no excuse for the performances by the Toronto Maple Leafs in games 5 and 7 at home. How do you explain, with that much on the line, getting whooped 6-1 in both cases?
Vic, honestly, I just think Florida's that much of a better team. I really do. I just think that they know how to play hard, grinding playoff hockey, and this group in Toronto doesn't. I think Berube knows how, but it's not enough to have your coach know how to do it. You got to have the players that can do it. And this group of players cannot play that style that the Panthers play, and we're going to find out in the next round or two if anybody can play the way the Panthers can play.
We're going to circle back to the residual effect that this may have on the Maple Leafs, but we should give our plaudits to the Panthers for winning this series in 7 games. They will meet the Carolina Hurricanes in the East Final for the second time in 3 years. They actually swept the Hurricanes 4 one-goal games, including a quadruple overtime, a single overtime, and a game ending with 5 seconds left in regulation. All those goals scored by Matthew Tkachuk.
And the situation was the same as this year. Carolina was the higher seed. Yep. They won the 2 games in Carolina, and then they came back and won the 2 games on home ice. I was there when they got the Prince of Wales trophy in Florida, and they were on their way to the Stanley Cup final,
where they subsequently lost to Vegas, but of course came back last year to win their first ever Stanley Cup, and they're going for their second. But their first order of business was to finish up the series with Toronto, which they did, and they welcomed Evan Rodriguez back to the first line after he missed 2 games. I don't understand how, in a game with this much on the line, that if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs, you allow the first 20 shot attempts by your opponent, and I don't care who it is, but the one thing that I found startling was I don't think the camera panned left for the entire first 8 minutes of play.
You're right. We're watching the same game, but you know, the one thing I want to draw your attention back to is something that I said yesterday, and I felt it strongly during the day, and I said it to several people outside of this podcast, and that was that there would be an enormous amount of pressure and stick squeezing by the Leafs in this game right off the bat because of the pressure that Toronto, the city, the fans, and everybody has on this team. And that Florida would be a lot more relaxed because they would be on the road and it's just us against the entire world. And I thought that was evident in the first period. Like you said, 20 shot attempts. The first 20, it was 20-0 in shot attempts. Shots were 7-0. In fact, Nylander had the first shot on net, which was a real good save by Bobrovsky. But my point is that to me, it just looked like they weren't able to get out of that pressure that they were under and play freestyle. I mean, even if you look at the final stats for the game, guys that normally get 4 and 5 shots a game got hardly anything, got like 1 or 2. So
it was like there was a foot of snow in the Maple Leafs end and they couldn't get out. But once they got past that initial onslaught and still were scoreless, they had several good chances. As you mentioned, William Nylander, Max Pacioretty, Scott Laughton, and Steven Lorentz both had breakaways. Bobby McMann, Auston Matthews, all had good opportunities. So the Leafs had the chance to flip the narrative in the first period, and credit Sergei Bobrovsky for keeping the game scoreless heading into the first intermission.
And again, I just want to say the same thing. You just mentioned all those good chances, and I agree with you. They were all great chances, but they weren't playing the way they would play during the. You can't tell me that if that was a regular season game, they would have missed all those opportunities. I don't think so.
Probably not against the opposition they would have been playing, but usually we look at turning points in a game as a specific play or something that a player does. And in this case, at the 13-second mark of the second period, referee Chris Rooney got clipped by the stick of Nico Mikkola. And I thought the energy in the building at that point absolutely pancaked.
It did. And you know what? It was a horrible scene over there. You rarely see a player with this much blood. I mean, when his hand was up to his face, his fingers were completely coated in blood. There was blood on the boards. Well, like where he got a handprint. It looked like something out of Dateline. Honestly, I mean, and I was worried, and I make no joke about it. I was worried that this poor guy had lost an eye. Yeah. So it looked really bad, and you're right. I think because everybody was so concerned, there was just the energy dropped totally.
Rooney is okay, took stitches, and fortunately the stick missed his eye, and he was replaced by Garrett Rank for the rest of the game. And so with that energy kind of sapped out of the building, Florida pounces, and at the 3:15 mark, Evan Rodriguez, a slick little redirect to Seth Jones, who's outstanding in this game, partial 2-on-1 with Alex Barkov, with Brandon Carlo back. He goes high blocker, and it's a 1-0 lead for Florida. And this was pointed out in the broadcast. I didn't love the way Carlo played that 2-on-1. I think he gave a little bit too much respect to Jones on this play.
He gave him too much space. He backed away from Jones. He didn't play it as a 2-on-1 where you stay between the puck carrier and the recipient of a pass. He let Jones have a free hand right in on wall, and Jones, with a real good shot, scored the goal. But I couldn't believe how Carlo backed away and played that 2-on-1. I thought it was a horrible way of playing it, and it ended up with the puck in the net.
A little over 4 minutes later, Brad Marchand's shot is put in on a rebound by Anton Lindell, but I thought the initial problem here was a rebound surrendered by Joseph Woll that needed to be controlled.
Yeah, it wasn't controlled, and it ended up with Lindell, who puts it in the net. And you know what? We're all of a sudden going from the scoreless first period. We're 7-18 into the second period, not even halfway through the period, and it's 2-0. And it's like, uh-oh.
Not for long, because 2:21 after that, Jonah Gadjevich bangs home a rebound of an A.J. Greer shot, 3 goals in 6:24. And you and I had some discussion over whether or not this play was offside, because it certainly had all the optics of it.
To the untrained eye, including mine, it looked very much offside because the puck was propelled into the zone slightly by Seth Jones, and Gadjevich hadn't exited the zone yet. And Jones never touched the puck. Gadjevich went over the blue line to exit the zone. Then Jones got the puck, and the play proceeded from there. Now, the only thing is that had it really been offside, Berube and his coaching staff and video guys would have been screaming, and they let it go. Here went the faceoff.
Former NHL referee and current ESPN rules analyst Dave Jackson sent me a video to slow that play down in a demo. And when I went back and I looked at this play, it was the exact same thing, that while Jones had propelled the puck into the Toronto end, he did not touch it until Gadjevich had tagged up. Play was legal. The explanation was great. 3-0. And at that point, Berube goes off on his club during the next commercial break. And that's something that we have not seen from him all season long.
And we didn't see that on TV. Did they do a replay of him going off on the team?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, because I missed that. But I can only imagine that he was trying to get something going. They're down 3-0 in Game 7 at home.
But instead, soon after that, Sam Bennett tips a puck off the post, and Carter Verhaeghe had an open shot and only hit Brandon Carlo in his rear end to keep this from getting any worse. And Seth Jones had an opportunity for a second goal, which was waved off for goalie interference with 5 minutes left. This was one of those great acquisitions by GM Bill Zito on March 1st. Jones was absolutely terrific in this game.
He wasn't. He is a terrific player, and he has been in Nashville, then Columbus, and then Chicago. None of those teams were even close to being called a contender. And so it's interesting, once Seth Jones got his chance to be on a contender, would he just be a real good player with a crummy team like he had been so far in his career, or would he be a real good player on a really good team, which he is right now on the Florida Panthers? In fact, I'll tell you how good he is. He had the most ice time of anybody on the team last night of the Florida Panthers. He had more ice time by 39 seconds than Aaron Ekblad, who usually leads their team in ice time. Played 23 minutes and 42 seconds, Seth Jones did last night, and I thought was probably, if you don't want to give it to Bobrovsky, he was the best player in the game.
Shots in the second period, and they were updated after the game, 18-5. And the attempts were 75-32. 75 attempts by the Panthers through two periods. That was the most by any team in the NHL through two periods all season, including the playoffs. If you're the Maple Leafs, that can't happen. Can't.
I don't think you're going to win with those kind of numbers. Don't call me a genius, but I don't think so.
You just play one on the podcast. Leafs come out in the third period, get a little bit of life. Max Domi scores at the 2:07 mark with a nice little pick by William Nylander. Goal comes as a result of a bad change by the Panthers. But any juice that the Leafs had, 47 seconds later, Eetu Luostarinen tips in Marchand's shot, and the lead is back up to 3. Just like
I gotta say something though. Let's give a little glimmer of positivity towards the Leafs. Max Domi has played his best hockey of his career since being with the Leafs.
Yeah.
And I think has played really well for what his role is in these playoffs. And, you know, Max Domi's been on umpteen teams. He was originally drafted by Phoenix, traded then to Montreal, then traded on to Columbus, I believe, and then was in Dallas for a while. I mean, I could go on, and I don't have his bio in front of me. But he signed as a free agent in Toronto 2 years ago. I asked Ty why he's not wearing number 28. He said he wanted to be his own guy, and that's why he took number 11. But he's been really good for Toronto. He's taken some stupid penalties, yes, in the playoffs, but that's the style of game he plays. But he's a legitimate player for Toronto, a meaningful player, whereas obviously on those other teams he played on, for some reason it didn't click, and he was never a guy that was kept around. And I think in Toronto, he has a role there, and he's been very good.
This is actually his 7th stop. But more to your point, he can't be your big gun. He cannot be the guy that you are looking for to score, and that he's making the offensive contribution that he's making. That's great. But if this is an Edmonton type situation where you're getting secondary scoring to support your big guns, that's where it works. He can't be the primary, and his offensive contribution was far too much in the forefront for the Leafs in this series.
Both Auston Matthews and William Nylander, would you agree they're the two best players on the team?
I would.
Both only 2 shots on net.
Yep.
How are you going to win when those two guys, who are all-star game guys, only get 2 shots in Game 7? I mean, and do you know the most shots any of the Leafs had in Game 7? 2.
Yep.
2. That's it. There was E2 Lusterainen, who a lot of people haven't even heard of, had 4 shots on net. And when I say they haven't even heard of him, if they're not in Florida, Ekblad and Seth Jones, defensemen for the Florida Panthers, each had 4 shots on net. Anton Lundell, not a household name, he had 4 shots on net. Nylander and Matthews had 4 shots on net combined.
Well, that third line, which included Lundell, Lusterainen, and Brad Marchand, 7 points on the night. Marchand and Lusterainen, goal and 2 assists each. Lundell with a goal, as we'd mentioned before. Rounding out the scoring, Sam Reinhart scored off a faceoff that was won by Alex Barkov. This was while TNT was in replay, so he actually missed the goal. And then Marchand, the final nail in the coffin with the empty netter, and Leaf fans showing probably the ultimate disrespect, throwing jerseys and Leaf hats onto the ice, and not to celebrate a hat trick.
No, and you know how much you pay for a Leaf hat or a Leaf jersey at those games in Scotiabank Arena? You pay a pretty Canadian penny, let me tell you. And let me say something else, Mr. Television. I have never seen a game, and especially a Game 7, a playoff game, where all of a sudden I'm going like, what do you mean it's 5-1, Reinhardt scores, it's 5-1? What, where, how did that happen? Where did that happen? Now, you tell me, Mr. Producer.
Well,
how the hell does that happen?
One of the cardinal rules is you better be careful if you're running a replay with a faceoff in the defensive zone. And I believe they were actually coming out of a break also. So they left themselves exposed to exactly what happened there.
I don't see a lot of TV blunders other than some of the people they pick as talent, but that was a blatant blunder by TNT. And I only bring it up because I haven't seen it happen before.
I've seen it happen once, and back in the ESPN contract prior to this one, and it happened in overtime, which is even worse. I mean, this one actually just happened at the time that the score was 4-1 and the game was already decided. So the impact was minimal, but boy, I remember that night. That
I can tell you who gets pissed off after doing color commentary that I did for many years. Those play-by-play guys get really pissed off when they miss a goal, when they don't get to call a goal in a game, especially Joe Beninati. Boy, did he get mad. If he missed a goal, if you were talking, and because you don't talk as the color guy unless you think there's no chance of a goal going in, right? That's when you jump in and you try to jump out if there's a scoring chance. And one night I was with him, and there was nothing I could do because I started to speak, and it turned and boom. And boy, you could see smoke coming out of his ears.
Just leave it at this. When the analyst tells you that a goal went in, it's not good.
No, that's not good.
Hey, hats off to Paul Maurice, 6-0 in Game 7. You know, we hear about Peter DeBoer at 9-0. Paul Maurice, 6-0 now. Brad Marchand, 5-0 in Game 7s against the Leafs. What is next for Toronto? Because Brandon Shanahan's been there forever. Brad Treliving has some contracts he has to deal with. I think it is clear Mitch Marner has played his last game in Toronto. It's not going to be a boring summer there. That's for sure.
Well, Brad Treliving, the general manager, this is his second season. His first season was a disappointing playoff, and they ended up firing Sheldon Keefe, and that's how Craig Berube became the coach. This is Craig Berube's only season that he's coached. He's going nowhere.
This isn't on him, though.
Nowhere. No, it's not, and it's not on Treliving. Treliving's only been there 2 seasons. These guys were already in place. This is on the players. I know you're going to say, well, or someone's going to say, well, who put all those players in place? Yeah, wouldn't you? If you had the chance to get Matthews, Marner. I mean, Tavares got signed by the last GM because he must have had good analytics. But, you know, they've had high picks and they've picked the right guys, but they haven't been able to get them to mesh to the extent that they can win a second-round playoff series.
I think the fallout is going to be significant here. And as I said, it is not going to be short for drama this summer in the offseason in Toronto. All right, here's your cue.
It's time for This Day in Stanley Cup History.
Thank you, Don Pardo. So, see, not too many people know who Don Pardo was. So, on this date, May 19th, we have 3 items here. So, I'm going to save what would be perceived as the best for last. This is for you. But in 1974, in this date, the Flyers become the first expansion team ever to win the Stanley Cup, and we actually celebrated that last year with Bernie Parent and Jay Snyder. A 1-0 win over Boston. Rick McLeish, the only goal, tipping in a Moose Dupont shot in the first period. Bernie Parent made 30 saves to seal the first Cup win ever for the Flyers. And in 1995, Wade Flaherty makes 56 saves. Ray Whitney scores at 154 of the second overtime to give the Sharks an opening round win over the Calgary Flames. But when I was doing research on this, and this is some of the great nuggets that wind up coming up when you do these. 2 Russian legends got the assists on Whitney's goal.
Wow, they it must have been. I can see them right now. Go ahead.
Sergei Makarov and Igor Larionov.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Larionov. I was pretty sure it was him. He was a great player
And part of the legendary KLM line with Krutov.
Yes, not the one that you put on your salad.
No, not that one. All right. You ready for your day in the sun here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. 1994. Stefan Matteau. But not the goal that people are thinking of. This was the first of his double overtime winners in Game 3 in New Jersey. I've often maintained, Neil, that this was the best game in that series that nobody talks about.
It was very memorable. And for Stefan Matteau, who his whole career has come down to those 2 goals. I mean, he's made a life out of those 2 goals.
Just like we're making a life out of this podcast.
Yeah, but without any money. Hey, I wanted to mention, you mentioned Don Pardo. Did you know, and here's something for you to wake up the kids, Alex Trebek is going to have his own postage stamp coming out by the U.S. Postal Service.
Canadian legend makes his mark in the U.S. for, of course, hosting Jeopardy all those years. And Don Pardo was a studio announcer for many shows going back in the past. So that's the connectivity that Neil and I have attempted to make regarding Don Pardo.
Which could put our podcast in double jeopardy.
Well, we hope not, because later Monday, we will be coming back with NHL Wraparound, and Craig Button returns once again, where we can go over our picks, make predictions, and analyze both conference finals, the Hurricanes and the Panthers, and the Stars and the Oilers.